Center call the following motion. Do you want me to read it into the text now?
Yes, please.
I move that in light of new regulations the Government of Canada has implemented for owner-operator and fleet separation in Quebec and Atlantic Canada, and the need to ensure that ownership and license transfers continue to be transparent, that the committee undertake a study examining the process and structure for corporate offshore licenses and quota transfers, that the committee receive witness testimony from officials from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and industry representatives, that the committee also accept written briefs from individuals or organizations who wish to submit input. And Mr. Chair, correct me if I'm wrong, I would like to make a minor amendment to this. Yep. Go ahead. And that the committee hold two-hour meetings.
Okay, is that the entirety of your motion?
Yes.
An amendment?
Yes.
So I don't know where you read it in the amendment into it as well. I don't know if we have to deal with an amendment separately or do we consider it? Okay, I'm being told to do the amendment first.
Okay, do you want me to repeat that, Chair?
Yes, please.
The amendment to my motion is that the committee hold two-hour meetings.
I can't hear.
Okay, can you hear me, Richard? Check to see. Somebody might want to call Richard and see what's going on because his mic is off.
Okay. Hi, can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, anyways, it glitched or something, internet or whatever, but I can hear you now. Did the motion get formally submitted? I'm sorry, it cut out partway through Mr. Morrissey's talk there. So
yes, it did. And do you want me to ask Mr. Morrissey to read it out in its entirety again, whereas you didn't hear it?
I think I'm okay. I got the list, and he was just adding at the end about a two-session study proposal, right?
Two-hour meetings.
Okay. Yep. No, that's fine. But Mr. Chair, I do have an amendment to his motion. As you probably saw, it was circulated. I had a motion very similar to Mr. Morrissey's, but I do have a couple of amendments that I would like to propose to his particular motion.
Okay. Well, Mr. Morrissey has added an amendment already. So can we deal with his amendment first?
Sure. Yep.
And then I'll go to you and for anyone else who got any discussion on it. So I think everybody has heard the motion and has heard the amendment proposed by the mover. Is there any discussion on the proposed amendment? Mr. Williamson.
Just the rationale for limiting it to two-hour meetings. That seems like a pretty meaty motion or study or review to look at the legislation, the changes, the impact on inshore fisheries, and then of course the corporate angle, which you mentioned as well. Just curious why the limited space that allows just for really a small handful of witnesses.
Okay. Mr. Morrissey, would you like to respond to that?
It was the same request made by your colleague.
Well, I got a few more ideas if you want to follow our lead.
I feel that the two-hour meetings is correct. Is enough time to study it, but I'm at the disposal of the committee, at the wishes of the committee.
Right.
I'm not sure how to proceed. I mean, it's plus we have more motions coming from my colleague MP Bragdon. I'm wondering, Mr. Morrissey, would you read it to table that for now, so we can figure out what we're studying here first, and then we can look at how we're going to close it off.
Chair, it's your call, but I prefer for my motion to be dealt with.
Well, the motion has been presented and the amendment has been presented. So we can't do anything further until we deal with the actual amendment as proposed by the mover.
Oh, and sorry, Mr. Morrissey, I wasn't suggesting you table your motion. Far from it. Just the amendment to that on the time, and we come back to it. I'm not suggesting you withdraw it, but we perhaps talk about the study and other amendments to it that might impact the length we want to give. That's all. Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, point of order by Mr. Hardy. Mr. Beach.
I just want a clarification. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the actual wording of the amendment. Is it 2 meetings for 2 hours, or is it at least or no less than 2 meetings for 2 hours? I just need clarification on that.
That the committee hold 2-hour meetings.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Johns, you were waving.
Thanks. I actually agree with Mr. Williamson that if we can just wait to hear what Mr. Bragdon has to say, because if it's going to, be around Mr. Morrissey's motion and potentially expanding it or whatever, let's hear that if we can, because it's probably going to give us some scope of how many meetings we have. I don't see any issue with deciding on, holding off voting on how many meetings we have until we've heard from Mr. Bragdon.
Well,
okay, I'm okay with that.
Okay. Okay, so Bobby, are you withdrawing your amendment right now so as we can move on to something else? Because it is still there to be voted on as such if it remains.
Well, I want to. Can I reintroduce the motion after we hear from Mr. Williamson?
You can reintroduce the amendment. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay,
fine.
Mr. Bragdon.
I'll withdraw it then for him to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Morrissey. And look, in regards to this motion, and as you saw, I had submitted one that's very similar. So since we're dealing with Mr. Morrissey's motion, I have a couple of proposed amendments, and one would be right after off.
You're froze up, Mr. Bragdon.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. This is welcome to rural New Brunswick internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if you have more than one amendment, Mr. Bragdon, can we deal with one at a time?
Okay. We'll deal with this one.
Okay.
Sure. This is the first one. So after structure for corporate offshore licenses and quota transfers, there's a comma, we would amend and insert how the government of Canada will uphold principles of fleet separation and owner-operated policy vis-a-vis the sale of Clearwater Seafoods, and whether the government of Canada and Clearwater ownership share a common interpretation and understanding of how policies of fleet separation and owner-operator policy will be applied to Clearwater. That for this study, the committee hold 2-hour meetings to receive witness testimony. So that's it's a long one, but that's the amendment. Yeah.
Mr. Johns.
I'll be opposing this amendment. And Mr. Chair, through you, I have concerns that we're bringing specific sales of fishing quota to this committee, and why the Conservatives have chosen one that includes the Mi'kmaq and not other sales of fishing quota or fishing licenses or sales of companies to this committee. So I have deep concern with that. I think Mr. Morrissey's motion covers this off in terms of the overall scope of the impacts of sales of licenses and on the East Coast, on the inshore and fishery as well, and what I think Mr. Bragdon's trying to achieve. So I just don't understand why they're specifically focused on this sale, and I have huge issues with it, and so does our party.
Okay. Before you answer, Mr. Bragdon, Mr. Morrissey is waving his hand, so you can, if he has a concern as well, you can answer both then right afterwards. Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Chair, in all due respect to my colleagues, he's mixing apples and oranges. The owner-operator of fleet policy separation is related to the inshore fishery. It's extremely specific. Offshore corporate licenses do not fall under that policy. So I don't know why we would be trying to study both, and there's no relationship between the two. We have in Canada offshore corporate licenses. Or offshore, yes, corporate licenses are held by corporations through licensing and quota. The inshore, the fleet separation and the owner-operator policy is at inshore. It's very specific. It was studied at land. Everybody understands it. These are two very, very different issues. And to try and mix them in this study simply would do injustice to the inshore fishermen.
Mr. Bragdon.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect to my honorable colleagues, this is in direct response to the correspondence that many, if not all, members of this committee have been receiving with direct concerns from the fishing associations. And these fishing associations have been bringing these concerns to all of us. I believe we have an obligation to make sure their concerns are fully vetted and that we are able to make sure that their concerns are heard, and that this principle, and irregardless of this, whether it's this particular sale or any future sales regarding any amount of industry stakeholders across the country, that we make sure we have a really good understanding and know what principles the government will be upholding in these. This is not about just one particular sale individually. This is about across the spectrum, and these associations have brought these concerns forward to all of us as members of this committee.
Okay, I don't see any other intervention on the proposed amendment by Mr. Bragdon. So, Tina, if we could, Mr. Williamson.
Yeah, I'm just. My question is actually to Mr. Johns. Gord, are you concerned that it's this deal, or I'm kind of at a loss because there is really only one transaction on offer right now, which potentially impacts owner-operator fleet separation in Atlantic Canada. The law that the Liberal government passed on this to protect owner-operator fleet separation is part of the study. But do you oppose a review of that just to ensure the law stands and that everyone's on the same wavelength here?
I'm fine with what Mr. Morrissey is proposing, Mr. Williamson. I don't believe the motives are genuine and what you're coming from the Conservative Party in terms of where you're going with this. I don't believe that you would be putting this motion forward if it wasn't including the Mi'kmaq. And that's how we see it. So that's where I'm going with this, and I am being straightforward on this.
Okay.
And I have deep concerns with it. So I'm sharing with you my perspective on this, and I will be voting against the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. Mr. Williamson?
Call the question.
Yeah, I have to respond to that. You are deeply wrong, and I regret that you impute motives to questions. I don't impute your motives when I hear some of the things that come from you or your bench. This has been an issue down here with a corporate fishery that long predates the involvement of the Mi'kmaq. For 10 years, I have been involved with Mi'kmaq. Pardon me. Thank you. For 10 years, I've been involved with this, long before this deal was established. And there has been a constant and ongoing struggle to ensure inshore licenses stay in the hands of individuals that own those licenses. That's it. And that is why first the Conservative government moved to clean up and end the controlling agreements that allowed the corporate fisheries to, through gray zones and loopholes, run these boats as if they own them themselves. And then following on that good work, mostly done under by the former Fisheries Minister Gail Shea, the Liberal government legislated that, went from regulations into law because they too were so concerned about it. So this is the question of the big guy, the corporation, looking to circumvent the laws that have been in place or regulations to ensure the fishery stays communal. It's as simple as that. So you are flat dead wrong when you suggest we would not be bringing this up were it not for this deal. We've been bringing this up collectively in Atlantic Canada for over a decade now. So I ask questions.
state your position, but don't impugn my motives or any other members on this committee, because we're looking out to ensure the fisheries here stays communal. And whether that is through Indigenous or traditional fishers, doesn't matter, but it has to stay local, because a corporate fishery would change the very nature of that business out here. So I applaud, I appreciate your questions, but please don't suggest the motives here are anything else than what we're stating they are. I think that's unfair, and if that's the way we proceed as a committee, it's going to undercut the trust we have, and I think the dialogue we ought to have on this committee. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Johns.
I think, Mr. Williamson, the concerns and questions you have will be addressed, and you could have those questions posed to witnesses under Mr. Morrissey's study. I believe you can get the answers that you would like and resolve these concerns. In terms of showing respect at this committee, I have been rudely interrupted and attacked by the Conservative bench at this committee, interrupted while I'm speaking, and cheap shots taken at me, which you recall. So please don't try to tell me that you've treated me with respect and heard me out and heard my opinions, when that actually isn't the case.
Just on that, I have never cut you off, and I have always treated you with respect. In fact, even reaching out to you behind the scenes. So I regret you take us all as all members of this committee as the Borg, and we're all one and the same. But that's just the wrong. Let it go.
Okay, Gord, I see
I'm willing to let it go, but I'm not willing to have this member try to tell me that they've treated me with respect the whole time their party. That has not happened. I've signaled my concerns.
Can we stick to the actual amendment for when it comes to the discussion? So I don't see any more hands up to talk to the amendment. Madam Gill.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. And for the benefit of all, finally, Mr. Bragdon wanted to make an amendment. And I would like to know whether he believes that the motion as tabled by Mr. Morrissey will prevent him from discussing what he is adding in his amendment. So I'd simply like to hear from him. I've heard Mr. Johns and Mr. Williamson, but I'd like to know what this will open as additional space for discussion if his amendment is adopted. Thank you.
Yeah, and just to remind people as well that all comments, whether they're against or opposing what somebody else said, please address them to the chair and not to another member of the committee, if you would, please. So seeing no more intervention on this, Tina, can we go to a vote on the amendment by Mr. Bragdon, please?
Monsieur le Président, j'ai posé une question.
Mr. Chair, I asked a question. I don't know if Mr. Bragdon could answer my question.
Sinon, je peux répéter.
If not, I could repeat the question, but I would have liked to hear an answer before taking a position.
Do you want to repeat again for Mr. Bragdon, Madam Gill, on his amendment?
Bien sûr.
Certainly, Mr. Chair. As I said, Mr. Morrissey presented a motion. Mr. Bragdon wants to amend it. I would like to know how will his amendment open further space for discussion within the study? Or to repeat it another way, as is, would that prevent us from discussing everything he wants to discuss in the study if his amendment is not passed? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Gill. Mr. Bragdon, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah. Okay. Merci, Madam Gill.
Thank you for the question, Ms. Gill.
And look, in regards to this, I feel like that the reason why the amendment is being proposed is it brings clarity to the issue that's at hand. It reflects the concerns that have been coming from the fishing associations throughout our region and across the country pertaining to this. And we felt like it added the layers to make sure that the parameters were clear around the discussion and what is at hand. So we feel like it adds further clarification, and it identifies the concerns that were raised directly by the associations themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Bragdon. Seeing no other intervention on the proposed amendment by Mr. Bragdon, Tina, can we go to vote, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Batiste.
I vote no on the amendment.
Mr. Beach.
Opposed.
Mr. Kellaway.
Opposed.
Mr. Hardy,
Opposed.
Mr. Morrissey,
Opposed.
Mr. Arnold,
In favor? In favor of the motion?
thank you. Mr. Bragdon,
In favor of the amendment.
Mr. Calkins,
In favor of the amendment.
Mr. Williamson,
In favor, please.
Madame Gill,
Contre.
Mr. Johns,
I'm against the motion, the amendment.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour, 4, 4, nays contre, 7.
Okay, so the proposed amendment is defeated. Back to the main motion. Mr. Bragdon, you got your hand up? You're on mute.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do have another amendment to propose, and it would be after the line that says receive witness testimony from officials from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans, we would add the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard and industry representatives, and then add to answer questions, including those raised by harvester organizations in their correspondence to committee members.
Okay, everybody has heard the content of the amendment. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Tina, if you go to a vote on this proposed amendment.
Thank you. The amendment of Mr. Bragdon. Mr. Batiste,
I vote against.
Mr. Beach,
Opposed?
Mr. Kellaway,
Opposed.
Mr. Hardy,
Opposed.
Mr. Morrissey,
Opposed.
Just give me a sec.
You're going to continue, Tina?
yes. Mr. Arnold,
In favor of this amendment?
Mr. Bragdon,
In favor of the amendment.
Mr. Calkins,
In favor.
Mr. Williamson,
I'm in favor of the motion, please.
Madame Gill,
Pour.
Mr. Johns,
Opposed.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour 5, 5, nays contre 6.
Okay, thank you. The proposed amendment is defeated. Now we'll go back to Mr. Morrissey's amendment with adding the extra two-hour meetings. Tina, if you want to do a vote on the proposed, I don't see no hands up, so I presume there's no discussion. If not, someone can interrupt me. But Tina, when you're ready, please.
Mr. Batiste,
I vote for the amendment from Mr. Morrissey.
Mr. Beach,
In favor?
Mr. Kellaway,
In favor.
Mr. Hardy,
In favor.
Mr. Morrissey,
In favor.
Mr. Arnold,
In favor of the amendment?
Mr. Bragdon,
In favor.
Mr. Calkins,
Abstain.
Mr. Williamson,
Yeah, I'll abstain as well.
Madame Gill,
En faveur.
Mr. Johns.
In favor.
Mr. Chair, yeas pour, 9.
Okay, so the amendment proposed by Mr. Morrissey is added to the original motion. Is there any discussion on the main motion as amended? Seeing no intervention, Tina, if you could do a vote on the main motion as amended, please.
Main motion as amended. Mr. Batiste.
I vote in favor.
Mr. Beach.
Vote in favor.
Mr. Kellaway.
In favor.
Mr. Hardy.
In favor.
Mr. Morrissey.
In favor.
Mr. Arnold.
In favor.
Mr. Bragdon.
In favor.
Mr. Calkins.
Abstain.
Mr. Williamson.
In favor.
Madame Gill.
En faveur.
Mr. Johns.
Favor.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
This is on the main motion. In
As amended.
favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, yeas pour, 10.
Okay, the motion as amended is passed.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Calkins.
Chair, I loath to bring it up, but given what's happened at this committee, while this committee generally has cordial, if not friendly relations most of the time about what's transpired today. And I'll refer you to Standing Order 18, which deals with disrespectful or offensive language and so on. No member shall speak disrespectfully of the sovereign or any of the royal family, nor of the governor general or the person administering the government, and so on. Any offensive words against the House or against any member thereof, it continues on. No member may reflect upon any vote of the House except for the purpose of moving that such a vote be rescinded. And I'll refer to the rulings of Speaker Milliken in the past in regards to Standing Order 18, which goes on to discuss, moreover, personal attacks, insults, obscene language, or words that question a member's integrity, honesty, or character are not permitted. It is unparliamentary to state that a member has deliberately misled the House, as Speaker Milliken observed in 2002. If we do not preserve the tradition of accepting the word of a fellow member, which is a fundamental principle of our parliamentary system, then freedom of speech, both inside and outside the House, is imperiled. However, if a member who feels that his or her reputation has been maligned by the comments of another member raises a question of privilege, the Speaker must determine if such remarks constitute such a grave attack as to impede the honourable member in the performance of his duties. I'm saying this in the defense of my colleague, Mr. Williamson, whose character I believe and his motives were impugned by my friend, my adversarial friend, but my friend, Mr. Johns. Now, I don't have the authority for Mr. Williams to pursue this on his behalf, but I would respectfully ask Mr. Johns to withdraw his remarks insofar as they impugn the reputation of Mr. Williamson. We are free to agree and disagree respectfully at this committee. I don't like lecturing people, and I'm not trying to do that, but I think if we don't nip this kind of behavior in the bud at this committee, then we're not going to do the justice that the fishers of this country deserve. So I would ask Mr. Johns to respectfully withdraw those comments. I'd hate to see this get carried on any further.
Okay, I think Mr. Johns wants to respond. I will allow that.
I appreciate the comments from Mr. Calkins. And, you know, Mr. Chair, I should have, at the times when I was interrupted and insulted by two members of this committee in the past, I should have raised them to the chair. I should not have carried those forward, those concerns, and let the committee continue without addressing them at the time. So I take that on myself for not dealing with it at the time. This was not about attacking Mr. Williamson, who I have actually great respect for. and who has actually always treated me with great respect and who I really appreciate. So this was about me defending myself when he cited about my concerns and that he felt that he was being attacked, when in fact I was bringing forward some concerns from the past. I have great respect for my colleague, Mr. Williamson, and I appreciate Mr. Calkins raising this concern. So I apologize if there was any offense taken by Mr. Williamson, because again, I have deep respect for him, and he's always carried himself very much with respect towards me. But when I talked about his party on this committee, that would be a different situation. And I'm happy to highlight the two incidents that took place because they're on record and they're on video, and they could be easily brought up so that we could have a broader conversation. Be happy to address those as well.
Okay, I don't see anything else. I appreciate your quick response, Mr. Johns. Mr. Williamson.
I want to thank Mr. Johns for that. I do appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Gordon.
Okay, thank you. I think we have that kind of put to bed for now, and I would like to thank Mr. Calkins for raising it in the manner in which he did. And I will remind people that anytime they feel that they're being disrespected in any way by another member, identify it at the time, and as chair, I will deal with it appropriately at that time. And I will agree with everything everybody has said to a certain degree that this committee has in the past gotten along quite well, regardless of which party stripe members have been. And I say that even as chair and former chairs that have chaired this committee, there's always been a certain amount of congeniality towards one another. We might have our little jabs every now and then as committee members, but it's never escalated to anything beyond that. And the jab sometimes is a bit of humor more so than something as serious towards another member. So I would ask people to keep that in mind in the future. We'll move on, I guess, from that. And I know that that one is done. Mr. Johns, you had your hand raised second with regards to new business or committee business. So when you're ready, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do hope we can proceed in a better way, all of us. I hope we can learn from this. Certainly, I have a lot. Mr. Chair, several weeks ago, the Department of Fisheries and Oceans said it would be reinterpreting the regulations, defining what readily accessible means when it comes to frozen at sea spot prawns. And all of our offices in BC, and perhaps everyone here, heard from thousands of concerned constituents about how this would impact regional economies and the prawn industry in BC and Canada. So DFO has said it's, looking at awareness this year didn't resolve the problem, and we want to hear from the department and stakeholders on this, on how it impact them next year and in the future. So I'm moving that pursuant to Standing Order 102, subsection 2, that the committee a study of at least 2 meetings. I don't think it would take more than that to understand the impact of the Department of Fisheries and Oceans reinterpretation of the Fisheries Act regulations affecting frozen at sea spot prawns, and that the committee call witnesses, including senior department officials from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans and interested stakeholder groups, to testify, and that the committee report its conclusions and recommendations to the House. And I don't believe that we need to undertake a long study, and that, again, two-hour meetings would be sufficient to hear from witnesses on this.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. I believe, Mr. Arnold, you've raised your hand to speak to this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate Mr. Johns bringing this to the attention of the committee, as well know of the issue with the spot prawns. But it continues with unexpected announcements or decisions or changes in interpretation that are impacting harvesters right across the country. It's just we see it as an ongoing problem with the minister and the department of not consulting with the stakeholders, or the industry. It's just I think the spot prawn was the first one that really raised it to highlight to MPs' offices. I think we were all flooded by emails by that, but I don't know whether we could cover this in just 2 meetings, and I want to raise the attention of the committee that we have been postponing the study motions or motions for study that were on the docket long before this, that have a much broader scope. I think it's fine that it be on notice of motion to the committee, but to further postpone our study into the Pacific salmon, the illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries, the pinniped issue on both coasts. I think all of those have a much bigger impact on our overall fisheries in the country. And we keep getting sidelined into other I don't know whether you call them knee-jerk or reactionary studies by this in this committee, rather than focus on what the committee identified early on in the first session of this Parliament, and now in the second session, that as we got back underway after the proroguement, that we had priorities set out, and I don't think it behooves the committee to continuously change priorities because of what happens to be the issue of the day, because these issues of the day continue to pop up under this current regime. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Jaime.
Yes, and I'm in agreement with the study on the spot prawns, and I do believe there's an urgency to it, and I'd like to see it moved up. And I was wondering if Mr. Johns could speak to the urgency in this matter, because I do believe it's an important one that we need to look at right away.
Yeah, and well, first, I want to thank Mr. Arnold, because you're right. There's these issues that are constantly coming up, and the department's not explaining themselves. They're making knee-jerk decisions that are impacting people's lives. So people are out fishing right now, and some are afraid to go fishing. They're afraid that that just takes one officer that can enforce the reinterpretation of the rules, that can shut them down, and they're resistant in making further investments in future seasons. It could affect the market. There's lots of things that are coming into play right now, and there's obviously the uncertainty is the big issue right now at play, and they want this addressed right away. And here we are. This would literally take 2 studies, I think, to get this flushed out, and hopefully the department will back down, and we can get them to commit to backing down. And that this doesn't just affect the prawn industry; it actually affects all different fishing industries. Because if you talk about reinterpreting the rules, and if they can't check frozen at sea prawns, which take 5 minutes to thaw out, I mean, how are they going to get a fish that's in the front of a hold on a boat and check that and inspect that? I mean, this could be over to other species. So I actually think this is something fairly serious that affects both coasts and a bunch of multi-fisheries. So I think we should get the government to get in front of the committee and explain themselves on this, reinterpretation of the rules, because it's going to end up transcending over to other fisheries as well. And we've got a lot of fishers concerned about it. So hopefully we can get this cleaned up quickly, and that's what we're hoping.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johns. Mr. Hardy, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, just very briefly, Mr. Chair. I mean, this decision comes after decades of what they call tubbing, which has been the accepted process up to now. It seemed to be arbitrary. It seemed to be have been done with no consultation whatsoever. And Mr. Johns is right. This isn't the only incident. There's another one, I think, to do with clams or something. I heard emails are flying by all the time on some of these issues. So we really do have to look at this through the lens of fair process, as well as the specifics of this particular issue.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Mr. Bragdon, you had your hand up for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Mr. John, for bringing this forward. It is a very important issue, and I think this uncertainty is affecting from coast to coast. And I know with the prawn issue, but also there could be other issues that keep emerging if these regulations continue to be, the interpretation of regulations that have been interpreted one way for 50 years, and then all of a sudden it's being changed, or there's uncertainty around it. It really sends shockwaves to the whole industry across the country, coast to coast, at a time when they need as little uncertainty as possible. So there's enough others in dealing with this pandemic that we're all dealing with. So no, I totally appreciate where this is coming from and share the concerns around it. I do reference to my colleague, Mr. Arnold's concern, just that we do have a lot of things on the docket, and if we can incorporate this somewhere, obviously we want to, because this is very important to our fishing industry coast to coast. We got to alleviate the uncertainty.
Thank you, Mr. Bragdon. Seeing no more indication of intervention, Mel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to raise the attention that we've also heard from the aquaculture industry, and lately the oyster farmers that aren't able to, possibly not able to take their oysters to farmers market because of another reinterpretation or change, sudden change in rules that have affected them. So this is ongoing. This is more than just spot prawns. It's a persistent trend within this department and within the minister's offices recently. So it's more than just spot prawns. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other indication of an intervention, Tina, could we please move on to the vote and Mr. John's proposed motion, please?
Thank you. On the motion of Mr. Johns, Mr. Batiste?
I vote in favor.
Mr. Beach?
In favor.
Mr. Callaway?
In favor.
Mr. Hardy?
In favor.
Mr. Morrissey?
In favor.
Mr. Arnold?
In favor.
Mr. Bragdon?
In favor.
Mr. Calkins?
Mr.
Lane, you're on mute.
Mr. Calkins?
Sorry, I normally press the space bar and that works. For whatever reason, it didn't work this time. In favor.
Thank you. Mr. Williamson?
In favor. Thank you.
Madame Gill?
En faveur.
Mr. Johns?
In favor.
Yeas pour, 10, 10.
Okay, thank you, Tina. You passed unanimously. Next on the list, with their hand raised earlier, Mr. Bragdon.
I'm fine. I'm fine, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we've covered the areas that I was going to be bringing up. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bragdon, for that. Glad we could accommodate you sooner rather than later. We'll now go to Madame Gill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have three motions that I would like us to discuss that essentially concern language issues. So the first one is technical tests for witnesses. Would you like me to read it out? So that the clerk inform each witness who is to appear. Yes? Sorry, it's because of the interpretation. I'm going faster than the answer. Each witness who is to appear before the committee that the House Administration Support Team must conduct technical tests to check the connectivity and the equipment used to ensure the best possible sound quality, and that the chair advises the committee at the start of each meeting of any witness who did not perform the required technical tests.
Okay, we've heard the motion. Is there any discussion? Or I'm seeing thumbs up, so maybe there'll be no discussion. Just say we need to vote. Okay, Tina, could you do a recorded vote, please?
Merci. Sur la motion de Madame Gill.
Thank you. On the motion by Ms. Gill.
Batiste?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Mr. Beach?
In favor.
Mr. Callaway?
In favor.
Mr. Hardy?
In favor.
Mr. Morrissey?
In favor.
Mr. Arnold?
In favor.
Mr. Bragdon?
In favor.
Mr. Calkins?
In favor.
Mr. Williamson?
In favor.
Madame Gill?
En faveur.
Mr. Johns?
In favor.
Yeas pour, 11. 11.
Okay, thank you, Tina. Motion is adopted. Madam Gill.
Thank you. We can see this cordial spirit It's a matter of respect. Thank you very much. That was the easiest one. The second one, that all documents submitted for committee business that do not come from a federal department or have not been translated by the Translation Bureau be sent for prior linguistic review by the Translation Bureau before being distributed to members.
Okay, we've all heard the motion. Mr. Bragdon, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I propose a friendly amendment for Madame Gill to consider just after federal department, comma, would she consider adding members' offices?
Okay, we've heard the amendment. No further discussion indicated. So, Tina, can we vote on the proposed amendment first and then the motion as amended?
Thank you. Mr. Bragdon? Mr. Batiste?
I vote in favor of the amendment.
Mr. Beach?
In favor.
Mr. Callaway?
In favor.
Mr. Hardy?
In favor.
Mr. Morrissey?
En favor.
Mr. Arnold?
En favor.
Mr. Bragdon?
En favor.
Mr. Calkins?
In favor.
Mr. Williamson?
On vote oui ici. Ou moi, je vote oui.
Madame Gill?
En faveur.
Mr. Johns?
En faveur.
Yeas pour 11.
Okay, motion is adopted. Madam Gill, when you're ready.
I'm ready. So the third motion, substantive motions and amendments in writing in both official languages, that the text of any substantive motion or any motion in amendment of a substantive motion be distributed in writing in both official languages to all committee members before the committee begins debate on such a motion. No, you're right.
That was my mistake. So first one now in 2 or 3 days.
La mienne.
I do apologize. I'll go back now to the motion as amended from Madam Gill. The second motion that was presented by Madam Gill. Tina, could we do a recorded vote now on the amended motion, please?
On the motion as amended,
Yes.
Mr. Batiste?
Je vote en favor.
Mr. Beach?
Yes.
Mr. Callaway?
Oui.
Mr. Hardy?
Je vote pour la motion.
Mr. Morrissey?
Je suis en faveur.
Mr. Arnold?
En favor.
Mr. Bragdon?
Je suis pour. En favor.
Mr. Calkins?
In favor.
Mr. Williamson?
In favor.
Madame Gill?
En faveur.
Mr. Johns?
En favor.
Yeas pour 11.
All right. The motion as amended is now adopted. Now, Madam Gill, we can go to your third motion, please.
So the real third one, I'll repeat it. The subject is substantive motions and amendments in writing in both official languages, that the text of any substantive motion or any motion in amendment of a substantive motion be distributed in writing in both official languages to all committee members before the committee begins debate on such a motion.
Okay, we've all heard the motion. Any interventions? Not seeing any. Oh,
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
if I may.
Calkins, you're right down low on
Yep.
my screen. I'm sorry about
Yeah,
that.
it's okay. I'm not surprised. I'm just out here in Alberta. But could the clerk or somebody just remind the committee, for my benefit at least, what a substantive motion entails?
Tina or Nancy?
Thank you. I can certainly answer. Substantive motion is any motion that is not a dilatory motion, or that is not a motion, for example, to adopt a clause or a paragraph or something like that. So any motion that is basically more of a text, and that would be debatable and amendable.
Okay, not seeing any other intervention. Tina, can we go to a vote on the motion by Madame Gill, please?
In that case, Mr. Chair, just let you know, if the committee was to adopt the motion, the clerk and staff would probably need the committee to give guidance on practical terms for what it means on a daily basis on a regular meeting. What are the expectations while we meet? But the committee can definitely adopt, and the committee can definitely proceed to the vote and give guidance if it's adopted, or members can ask the questions right now and they can vote after.
Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so can we do the vote first, and then if we need some guidance, we'll get it then, depending on if the motion is adopted or if it is turned down. So, ready for the vote.
Okay, so you don't have any questions on practical terms and
Well,
applications?
No.
Mr. Chair, I think the clerk is suggesting that we would have to give clarity should we adopt this motion on a number of issues and directions. So there is ramifications for the result of this vote in how this committee operates that I think are substantive enough that the clerk has concerns. So I would like to know if the clerks would like to elaborate on what those kinds of ramifications and implications are before I cast my vote.
Thank you, Mr. Calkins. Nancy?
Thank you. Alors, je vais le dire en français.
All right, so I'll say it in French because the motion comes from Ms. Gill. In order to follow through with this motion, it says any substantive motion, and we're talking about anything that could be brought forward on the spot, so to speak, in a meeting, because you adopted the motion that says that it should already be distributed in both languages. If something comes up, for example, if it's translated in not very good quality of translation, who is responsible for verifying the translation? The committee clerk is not an official translator, for example. The same thing applies if something is provided to us directly during the meeting. At that point, would that imply that we would have to wait and send it to the translation bureau? So perhaps Ms. Gill could explain her opinion on what her intention is on how we would proceed with this. And if I take an example, for example, in the fall, when there was a motion which was presented in public, and then there were a number of amendments, then what is Ms. Gill's intention as to how the clerk and the chair should respond and proceed with that?
Merci, Madame la greffière.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Baptiste has his hand up as well. Maybe you can answer both concerns together, please.
Based on those points raised by the clerk, I'll be voting against.
Okay, I thought you had a different intervention than that. Madame Gill, please, if you would like to respond.
Yes, well, of course, the main idea behind bringing forward this motion is that As a legislator, as a parliamentarian, I would like to have access to the text in one of the two official languages or in both official languages, but in the one that I speak, in order to be in a position to have an informed reflection on the subject. This is the first thing as a parliamentarian. It's part of my right to have access to the text in my language. And here I would prefer to clarify that because, of course, when it comes up when it has to do with a word or two, it goes by very quickly. But I think I remember, for example, this was in the case of a report, so it wouldn't apply here, but certain motions that are very long, there are long amendments, and there are two things that most of the people in the committee don't usually experience, which is that the interpreters, of course, have a job to do, and they do it very rapidly, and they're efficient, and I thank them for that. But at the same time, sometimes you're already further on at the committee when I hear the interpretation. So there's a time lag involved, and at the same time, I have to, interpreter, you have to think about the interpreters. They already have some work to do, and I have to listen to them, understand, and reflect on it at the same time because it's a translation. So I'd like to have it. I don't want to have it necessarily in advance, but I would like to be able to have a translation in front of me to make an informed choice. And when I say that I would like to clarify it, of course, we could make a distinction between one word and a whole paragraph or a page. I could give the example of Mr. Williamson, my colleague, who had a lot of amendments that were raised at one point, and to me, and especially for the interpreters too, I have to think about them. It's a lot of work, and it doesn't enable me to be as effective as you can because it's in your language, in your first language. So it's really my concern, and my purpose is not to avoid being able to bring forward amendments on the fly, as was said so accurately, but I would like that to be possible too, but it's really the idea. The idea is not to delay things, but the purpose is to give everyone the same rights, because if you can imagine the things the other way around, in other words, if it's going on in French and all the amendments, or most of them, I'm the only one apart from Mr. Cormier, who's sometimes here, and Mr. Williamson also speaks a little French, in spite of the fact that I do speak English. It's my first language, and it's more difficult for me, and it would be difficult for you too. You would also like to have the amendments on the substantive motions or the motions in your first language. So simply to create a balance, a certain justice to the extent possible, or fairness. And I would like to repeat, the purpose is not to make things take longer, but to have a clarified thinking process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Johns, you waved your hand.
I support Madam Gill in that. I think in fairness, especially on these substantive longer motions, that we should ensure that it should be interpreted so that it's in both official languages.
Okay. Mr. Williamson.
Oui, moi aussi, je suis tout à fait d'accord.
Yes, I also fully agree with Ms. Gill. I thought that it was already the rule that if I, as a member of Parliament, have amendments to make or to submit, that they would be translated for the other members in our committee here. So I fully agree that this should happen, and I will vote with Ms. Gill here.
Mr. Hardy.
With respect to Mr. Williamson, that would have then made your amendments, or at least the amendments that Mr. Bragdon had to Bobby Morrissey's motion, very long, very time-consuming, and impossible to do, in a session. So think twice about that vote.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Madam Gill.
Well, actually, Mr. Chair, it would not have been impossible to present because I think that we have a responsibility. I take on that responsibility myself as a member of Parliament for my colleagues to provide them with a translation. So I think that Mr. Bragdon has done his job conscientiously, and of course it would have been well thought through, and he certainly had the idea of his motion before he presented it, and he could have, of course, had it translated. So this would not have lengthened the committee's work, and I would like everyone to vote in favor of the motion because it's a question of a minimum level of respect for my work as a parliamentarian and the French language, that I should have the means and the instruments in front of me to be able to engage in informed thought on behalf of my constituents, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Madam Gill. Seeing no further intervention, I will ask the clerk to do a recorded vote and keeping in mind the concerns of all members of the committee on this particular issue. Thank you.
Sur la motion de Madame Gill. Monsieur Baptiste.
Against.
Monsieur Beach.
Opposed?
Monsieur Kellaway.
Opposed.
Monsieur Hardy.
Opposed.
Mr. Morrissey.
Je vote contre.
Mr. Arnold.
I vote opposed.
Mr. Bragdon.
Opposed.
Mr. Calkins.
Opposed.
Mr. Williamson.
I vote in favor.
Madame Gill.
En faveur.
Mr. Johns.
En faveur.
Yeas pour 3, nays contre 8.
The motion is defeated. Mr. Hardy, you're next on my list.
I'm honored. Thank you. Mr. Speaker or Mr. Chair, in light of the recent Pacific salmon investment in the 2021 budget, I'd like to move that the committee allocate no less than 3 two-hour meetings to hear testimony and recommendations from experts on how best to allocate this money for Pacific salmon restoration.
Okay, we've heard the motion. I will check, Madam Gill, did you hear the substance of the motion translation?
Ben, j'ai entendu l'interprète, mais j'ai pas entendu j'ai pas le texte écrit, bien sûr, de la motion. Non, ça a été défait. Alors, mais j'aimerais rappeler, par contre.
Point of order. I would like to remind you, I heard the text of the motion by the interpreter, but I don't have the printed one in front of me.
Okay. We are in committee business, so I will ask Mr. Hardy to repeat it slowly, please. Madam Gill?
In fact, I had already brought a routine motion that in fact covered a portion of the motion that was just defeated about receiving the text in both official languages. So that was passed previously, so I don't know if the clerk can check whether I ought to receive a copy of the motion in French too.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. En fait,
thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Gill, I was also looking for the text, and I don't recall having seen that motion. Perhaps I'm mistaken, because right now I'm also working with another committee. It had been passed. No, I'm not talking about your motion. Fine. No, your first motion was passed and continues to be passed. However, the one that was just proposed, the text, I don't remember having seen that text. My apologies. I think that there's a mix-up here because actually Mr. Hardy wanted to bring forward a motion, as I understood it, and I do not have the text of the motion, And the motion I was referring to is one that was adopted a number of months ago to the effect that I ought to receive a written text of the motion. So I don't know, Madam Clerk. That's right. We also do not have the text, if I remember correctly. Would it be possible to send us the text? Oh, you mean my first motion? No. The motion by Ms. Gill was passed at the first meeting asking for motions that have not been, with regard to a notice, we should receive a text of it. That was already adopted, but the motion that was just put forward, the clerk and I have no recollection of having seen the text version of that or a notice of it. Perhaps we're mistaken, but would it be possible to send us the text?
In the text form?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I do. I hope that staff is listening in and can get it to Nancy right away.
Okay, so we'll wait and see if they're able to get that to us. And while we're waiting for that, I will remind members that, if for no other reason other than to be cooperative, I guess it would be great if anyone knows they're putting a motion forward during committee business to please supply it at least in one language to the clerk so as it can be translated for all members of the committee and distributed so as we would know and have knowledge of what is coming forward.
Perfect. I got the text, so I'm sending that at the moment.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy.
All right, it's gone. You should have it now.
Thank you, Nancy. I'll give everybody a minute to receive it and to read it. So has everybody had a chance to receive the motion and to read it? I see Madam Gill giving a thumbs up. So I would think everybody else has it. Mr. Beach.
Just a question to the mover of the motion. It doesn't say this outright in the motion, but can I assume that this isn't a separate study? You want this tacked on to the current salmon study? Just trying to get your intention.
Yes, that's correct. That's correct, because it fits hand in glove, obviously, with the intent of that study, which is to look at options to restore Pacific salmon.
Okay, Mr. Arnold, have you got your hand up, or was that one previously up? Okay, when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, this seems highly unusual to me that the committee spend this much time looking at a government budget line or a program. Although, you know, I certainly support anything we can do to restore our Pacific salmon stocks. I believe it's beyond the scope of the committee to determine how the government spends those dollars. That's the department's work. I guess through you, Mr. Chair, if Mr. Hardy can provide a little more background on why he thinks this is necessary. The Pacific salmon study has been dragging on for such a great length of time. I don't know whether we will ever see the end of it if we keep tagging new things on. We've certainly heard testimony that conservation work is needed, but can we maybe get a little bit more clarification from Mr. Hardy? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, don't answer yet, Mr. Hardy. There's a couple more people have questions or concerns. Madam Gill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, my comments are along the same lines as what Mr. Arnold just said. I was wondering whether it's up to the committee to tell the government how to distribute the amounts of funding in the budget. So I would suppose that some reflection was engaged in before that. Of course, I'm always willing to help out in any way I can, but I have the impression that we have already proposed, many possibilities were already submitted during the hearings in the committee, and I imagine that the government will be able to draw inspiration from the deliberations that have already been held. But of course, we're open if the government needs more from that viewpoint. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Gill. Mr. Batiste.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think we've heard really good testimony that talked about the urgency in resolving the situation. What the budget has now provided is the ability to move forward. And I think, you know, some of the Indigenous communities have stated that they want to have to be heard when looking at solutions. And so I think that this isn't us telling the government how to spend it, but actually hearing from those stakeholders as how they would like to see it done. And this, I think it's an important thing to do. And I think that we've come this far within the study. And so let's make sure that it's done right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Batiste. Mr. Hardy, if you'd like to respond to those comments.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that obviously this is a very interesting development, and this was borne out by the fact that because many people here on the coast know that I am on the committee, I was approached as soon as the budget came down from people who definitely wanted to tell us what they thought should be done with the kind of funding that's been available. Certainly, Mr. Johns, in many of his interventions or questioning, has brought up the fact that to this point there has not been the resources available to do important things in his riding and along the west coast of Vancouver Island. And finally, I think that we have now an opportunity, because this isn't just hypothetical. These are real things that can be done, and we can now start to get our head around prioritizing things. This can influence our recommendations and certainly help us expedite the work that needs to be done, I think, quite urgently.
Okay, Mr. Arnold, you had your hand up. You're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'll go back to comments I made previously about we continue to add on spur of the moment studies here, and detracting from the key studies that this committee had already identified that we would prioritize. I take, for example, the study on IUU fisheries. We know that we can produce more fish, but if we continue to let them be captured through illegal, unreported, unregulated harvests, they're of no benefit to Canadians. Madam Gill is waiting for her study on the Quebec recreational or sport fisheries. The committee has already discussed this long ago about how we would try and represent all Canadians. We've done a study on West Coast issues. We've done a study on East Coast issues. The IUU study would cover all coasts, East, West, and North Coast. And we have tried to be balanced on this committee, but now we seem to be chasing tails around all over the place. We really need to focus on what's going to make the biggest difference to fisheries in general right across Canada. And I put faith in the department to a certain extent. Once they have the funds available, that they will be able to find places to use those funds to make the most significant investments in restoration of our salmon stocks. But for this committee to try to be informed and make expert decisions or recommendations in even just 3 meetings, I think would be quite a challenge. So I really hesitate to and question Mr. Hardy's motives here and want him to recognize how he's delaying these other study motions or motions for studies that we have all agreed to as a committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Before I go to Mr. Hardy to respond, Mr. Calkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question for my colleague, Mr. Hardy, would be, in light of the massive undertaking that we've already done when it comes to the state of Pacific salmon and the study that we are winding down right now, would Mr. Hardy please enlighten me on any witnesses that he would call for the study that he is proposing right now that haven't already came to the committee under the context of the current study to testify about the very same issues regarding Pacific salmon? Because it feels like we're just going to be doing a micro set of the macro study we've just done, and I'm not sure that that's the best use of the committee's time. I remain to be convinced, however.
Thank you, Mr. Calkins. Mr. Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Calkins and Mr. Arnold. And to Mr. Arnold's point, the IUU study is important to us too. And I must say that we've supported that one all along. Per our earlier discussions over the prawn fishery and the oyster fishery, how I don't know if I can put this delicately, but I don't think we should leave the DFO to their own devices. I think that we need to step in and provide the kind of leadership that they apparently need from time to time, especially when they're dealing with something as important as this amount of money and a very transitional approach to a problem that has yet to be resolved, that is the disappearing salmon on the West Coast. To Mr. Calkins, I have a list. I just don't have it here in front of me, but I'd be more than happy to share that with you. And you'll see in the context of the people who now want to talk to us, the importance that they see, first of all, in the budget line, and secondly, now how they see themselves participating in the restoration efforts for salmon.
Well, but Ken, if you can, we've identified almost every witness and every expert and every stakeholder for Pacific salmon who is new in this context. Do you have any of, like, who would be new that hasn't already just been here?
There are some new ones, Blaine, but I don't have the list in front of me, unfortunately. But I'm more than happy to share that with you. But no, there are people that are identified on that list that I don't recognize from our previous testimony. They have approached us. They have something to say, and I think that because we're on the issue anyway, it's worthwhile, given the kind of investment that we're talking about, to take the extra time to make sure that it's as inclusive as possible of the people who can play a role in helping us deal with our crisis in Pacific salmon.
Great, thank you, Mr. Hardy. I don't see anything else for Mr. Arnold.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
The bells are ringing for a vote in the chamber.
Oh, okay. Are they 15-minute bells or 30?
That's
Mr.
30
Mr. Chair,
minutes.
you start
30.
walking west and I'll start walking east and we'll see which one of us gets to the chamber first.
They're 30-minute bells. You do.
30-minute bells, okay. But and Blaine's comment, Blaine, I don't think any one of us will get there very soon. I can't walk on water. But since the bells are ringing, can I ask for unanimous consent to continue on for another 15 minutes? That would leave 15 minutes on the bells for us to get set up to do our vote. I'm seeing thumbs up. Okay. All right. So we'll deal with it shortly in 15 minutes. So not seeing any other interventions on Mr. Hardy's motion, can Madam Gill?
Well, actually, I had a question, Mr. Chair, for Mr. Hardy, because I was a bit surprised by the motion. So with all due respect, I think that when there's an amount that's entered in the budget, then there's a will to take action to a certain degree. So interventions have been targeted specifically. So I have the impression that it's a bit the wrong way around, that money is being announced without knowing where to invest it. And is that what Mr. Hardy wants to tell us, in fact? Because that's the impression it gives me. I just wanted to check that with you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Gill. Mr. Hardy?
Well, I think that what we have heard, and we've heard this over the last two parliaments, in fact, that a lot of work needs to be done. The study that we've done so far, and we've heard from some excellent witnesses, give us a sense as to what's in the realm of the doable versus what we can't control, and where we then need to focus and prioritize. And certainly, since the budget came down, and certainly since these people have approached us, because they now have ideas. And it's the practical ideas that we really do need to work into this study to make the study itself worthwhile, and obviously to make this investment really pay off as much as possible.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hardy. Seeing no further intervention, Tina, can we go to a vote on Mr. Hardy's motion, please?
Thank you. Motion of Mr. Hardy. Mr. Batiste?
I vote in favor.
Mr. Beach?
In favor?
Mr. Callaway?
In favor?
Mr. Hardy?
In favor.
Mr. Morrissey?
Je suis en faveur.
Mr. Arnold?
Opposed?
Mr.
I'm
Bragdon?
opposed.
Opposed.
Mr. Calkins?
Opposed.
Mr. Williamson?
No.
Madame Gill?
Contre.
Mr. Johns?
I vote for the motion.
Yeas pour 6, nays contre 5.
Okay, Mr. Hardy's motion is passed. Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Thank you, Tina. In the few minutes we have left before we leave for a vote, I don't know if anybody wants to discuss schedule. And I know there's Mr. Calkins.
Actually, I just have a question. I'm looking for some clarification on this because we've never had this ability before where we could be virtually attending a committee meeting and virtually voting in the House of Commons at the same time. And Chair, you asked for permission to extend. Normally you would ask for that permission so that we would have enough time to still get to the chamber. I can assure you that I don't have to move 1 inch from where I'm currently situated in order to attend the chamber to vote. And I'm wondering what the ramifications of being able to continue with a committee meeting while a vote is in progress in the House of Commons might actually be, and whether or not the speaker or the parties have come to any agreement that I might not be aware of in that matter.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Calkins. It is my understanding that we're on a time limit, and I wanted to know, the bells were ringing. We could have stopped right there and then. I wanted to get the full 2 hours in if I could, which we're very close to doing. So when we get to that point, we would have to ask if we're extending beyond that. And I think it was probably about 6 or 7 minutes left before we get to the end of our time slot that was allotted. It's the only time we've extended in the past if we were delayed by votes, and that hasn't happened today. So
well, I guess my question is more theoretical, Chair. If we were to say, suppose that this vote was called 45 minutes ago and we were still in committee and we had witnesses, for example, normally we would close the committee, be summoned to the chamber, and we would lose all that committee time, where we don't have any of that issue now. And I'm just wondering what the correct procedure is now, given the fact that we can actually be, through technology, in two places at the same time. So anyway, I'll leave that theoretical discussion for a future time.
Not a problem. I appreciate that. I see Mr. Batiste, you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to propose that we get into the spotted prawn study, followed by Bobby Morrissey's motion, and then resume the discussion about the Pacific salmon. And so I would propose that order.
Okay, that's a proposal by Mr. Batiste. Mr. Beach? Mr. Hardy?
Yes, just given the logistics of getting witnesses, et cetera, though, I would want to see our Pacific salmon study go forward as scheduled for next Monday.
Yeah, I believe next Monday's meeting is already scheduled, if I'm not mistaken, and that'll go ahead as planned. That's not part of your actual motion that was just made. If I could suggest, I think it's not going to be easy, I don't think, to battle out what we're doing next and over the next few meetings. I would suggest that we try and carve out some time along the way to have a more wholesome, fulsome discussion on the actual schedule. I know that some members have raised the issue of getting done what we already have on the docket. We've got some new ones added now. We haven't got a lot of time really left between now and when the House is scheduled to recess in late June. So I think it would be foolhardy to try and put that together now in the short amount of time that we got left for today. And we all know now, and I'd ask for members to reflect on what we have done today in regards to motions and other things that we still have on the docket for consideration when we come back. And I'll try and set some time aside to do committee business, to do actual schedule in due course as soon as possible, if that's okay with the committee members.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. We did have a motion, though, from Mr. Batiste.
No, I don't think it was a motion. I think it was that he was suggesting that we would look at doing this first, that second, and that third, and in some order of importance. It wasn't moved as a motion. So I'm not seeing no discrepancy in what I have
sorry,
just
Mr.
said.
Chair, I might have left out the words "I make a motion," but I guess when I said that's what I was proposing, it was a little bit vague. But that's the motion, and that's where the priorities that I was hoping that we would vote on before we have to actually vote in the House.
Mr. Johns.
I just worry that we're going to need conversation around this, and if we run into the vote, I think we should be talking about this just in fairness. So I'm excited, Jaime, to have further dialogue on salmon, as you can imagine, always. But I want to be respectful that there is other studies and that we should have a wholesome dialogue that more than 1 minute, you know.
Yeah, actually, it's not much more than 1 minute. It's about 2 minutes left before committee time is up. And I would suggest that, yes, we look at it in a more fulsome way for the schedule, because it's going to be tight to get in what we want to get done. And I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that we are going to be interrupted along the way over the next 6 or 7 weeks on votes and whatnot. So we are probably going to lose some committee time along the way as well. And I don't think we should try and jam everything up tight, but I think as a committee, we should look at seriously what we want to get out of it before we do recess in June.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
You have to withdraw your first motion first, Mr. Batiste.
You corrected me and told me that it wasn't a motion.
Well, you said I will add it as a motion.
I will withdraw, Mr. Chair, and make that motion to adjourn instead.
Motion to adjourn. We are adjourned. See you all next committee and probably before that. Thank you.